I came from a super small town, Chapin, South Carolina, itty bitty town. Mostly upper middle class. I think my my high school is like 97% white guys. Like we just like had no diversity. We used to laugh and call Chapin the bubble, like when I grew up, because like nothing bad happened there. It was like Mayberry, right? And it's funny because when I first started fighting, like people are like, well, what are you doing for your job? I'm like, no, I'm trying to go be like a fighter in the UFC. And they're like, well, what is that? Like, what are you even talking about? You're gonna fight for money? I'm like, yeah, that's like, it's a real thing. It's on TV. Like at the time it was on Fox, I think. I'm like, yeah, it's on Fox. It's a big thing. Like,
are you in the mob?
Yeah. They're like, what do you mean, dude? Like, what are you doing? You're a bouncer? I'm like, no, I like, there's professional, like, they're like, you do tough mans? Like, remember the old tough mans they used to do?
I remember those.
Yeah. I'm like, no, it's like sanctioned like cage fighting. And it was never my intention to go into fighting. Right. But I was in Chapin, grew up there until I was 18 years old, was a multi-sport athlete, played football, wrestled my whole life. I had 4 brothers and a sister. So it was a super competitive household. My dad put me into wrestling when I was 10 years old, I want to say, because I was getting my ass whooped by my brothers all the time. And I think he was like, man, we gotta find some way for Cody to defend himself or get some of this frustration at, huh?
Are you the youngest?
I'm in the middle. So I have 2 older brothers, 2 younger brothers, and a younger sister. But my older brother, like, there was a big enough gap between me and my younger brothers that I never really could whoop their ass. They were much younger than me, like 7 and 8 years younger than me. So it was like too old to do that. My oldest brother was way older than me. He was kind of out of the picture like most of my life. But then my older brother was only 3 years older than me, and he just would take me to the cleaners, dude. It was bad, right? So, in fact, like my dad, so my parents were divorced when I was super young, but my father would be like, we'd go to his house and be there on the weekends, and anytime me and my older brother would argue, he'd be like, all right, I'm over it, put on the boxing gloves, we're gonna go in the garage. And half of it was, I think he wanted us to like work out our problems, half of it was like his entertainment. He was like the ref for our fights, and my brother just beat the brakes off me every time. Like we probably did this every weekend, and I would mostly start it. I was like, I'm gonna get him, and so finally I was like, how can I beat my older brother, right? And the rule was like, when you say you're done, it's over, right? There's no continuing this. So we put on the gloves to go out there. I punch my brother as hard as I can in the face, and immediately I throw off my gloves. I'm like, I'm done. It's over. He gave me the worst ass whooping I ever got, I think, after that. My dad was just laughing. And but yeah, so grew up in a super competitive family. Like I said, I wrestled, played football, I swam, I did all sports, right? Like I just was never at home, really. I was just trying to stay busy with sports. I loved athletics. I did pretty well in school. And I was fortunate, there was a college, Newberry College. It was only 30 minutes from where I grew up, but they were a top 5 team in the country in Division II wrestling. Wow. Yeah, which is uncommon because South Carolina is not really known for their wrestling, but they had been able to build like a pretty big powerhouse college team right down the road. And I actually knew the coach for a long time. I always did like summer camps there. And like I said, grew up super well off, right? And like didn't have many struggles. I was going to summer camp. We had jet skis and boats, and like my life was really good when I was young, which isn't typical for fighters, right? It's not. It's just not. Most fighters, like, they're fighting for a reason, right? They come from hard things, and I struggled with that later on in my career, and I'll get to that later. But so I ended up going to Newberry College. Like I said, it's about 30 minutes from my house. I was on a wrestling scholarship there. I majored in education. I was going to be a teacher and a coach. That was my plan, right? I was going to coach wrestling and football, and I was going to teach history and English in middle school. And then I very quickly learned, like when I did my student teaching, that I was not going to do that, right? I was like, maybe this isn't for me. And when I got to college to wrestle, there weren't many expectations, right? Like we talk about this fight for UFC 300. No one expects me to win. No one expects me to have success. When I got to college to wrestle, I made the state finals as a senior, took second in the state, but South Carolina is not a great wrestling state. This team that I went and wrestled for in college was really successful. I don't think anyone thought like I'd be a starter. I'd kind of be like a non-impact guy is what they thought. And I just worked really hard and eventually broke the starting lineup, ended up qualifying for the NCAA tournament twice and made the blood round, which is top 12 in the country twice, which was like out of this world for what the expectations on me were. But to me, I always wanted to be an All-American, which is top 8 in the country.
Yeah.
And it never happened, which was probably a good thing, because if I would have done that, I probably would have gone and been a teacher and been a coach. But I was just hungry for more. I was like, okay, well, what's going to be next? And I was a huge fan of MMA. but I didn't know if I was going to fight, but I was like, okay, I'll train. And so after I graduated college, I moved up to Michigan. I was dating a girl at the time. I moved up to Michigan with her. We were living together, and I was coaching at a Division III college, Olivet College. I was coaching wrestling, and then I started to train.